Hello everyone and welcome back to The Deep, your favorite channel for horror stories. I thought it would be a fun idea if everyone could leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also, like and subscribe. If you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to check out the first pinned comment for more.
Haunted Redwood Lodge, terrifying stay in California. It was the summer of 2023, and Emma had just arrived in California for her long-awaited vacation. As a travel blogger, she was always on the hunt for unique places to stay. This time, she had booked a room at the Redwood Lodge, a historic hotel deep in the forests of Northern California. Known for its rustic charm and isolation, it seemed like the perfect spot to relax and gather content for her blog. From the moment Emma arrived, she felt something was off. The lodge was picturesque but eerily quiet, with only a few guests around. The receptionist, Mrs. Harris, greeted her with a strained smile and handed her the key to room 13. "Enjoy your stay," she said, her eyes lingering on Emma with an unsettling intensity. Emma settled into her room, admiring the vintage decor and the view of the towering redwoods outside. As night fell, the lodge grew even quieter, an unsettling stillness settling over the place. Emma decided to explore the grounds, hoping to capture some atmospheric night shots for her blog. Walking around, she noticed the other guests standing motionless in the courtyard, staring blankly at the moon. A chill ran down her spine as she hurried back to her room, locking the door behind her. Trying to shake off the eerie feeling, she busied herself with editing photos and writing notes, but couldn't stop thinking about the strange behavior of the guests. Just as she was about to go to bed, she heard a soft, rhythmic tapping on her window. She froze, her heart pounding. Turning slowly, she saw one of the guests standing outside, his face pale and expressionless, tapping on the glass with his fingers. Emma screamed and backed away from the window, her heart racing. The man continued to tap, his face vacant and eyes wide. She grabbed her phone to call the front desk, but the line was dead. Desperate, she tried calling the police, only to realize she had no signal. She was completely cut off. The tapping suddenly stopped, plunging the room into a terrifying silence. Summoning her courage, Emma peeked through the curtains. The man was gone, leaving only darkness and her own fear. She quickly barricaded the door with furniture, determined to stay safe until morning. Just as she was stacking the last chair, she heard slow, deliberate footsteps in the hallway. Each step seemed to echo with menace, drawing closer and closer. Emma held her breath as the footsteps stopped right outside her door. The silence that followed was deafening. Then came a knock, slow and deliberate. "Who is it?" Emma called out, her voice trembling. "Housekeeping," a flat, emotionless voice replied. Emma didn't move. She knew something was terribly wrong. The knocking grew louder, more insistent, then stopped abruptly, leaving her in a tense, suffocating silence. She stayed awake all night, clutching a flashlight, every shadow and creak feeding her terror. When dawn finally broke, Emma cautiously approached the door and opened it a crack. The hallway was empty, eerily silent. She knew she had to leave the lodge as soon as possible, but the memory of the night lingered, a chilling reminder of the horror she had faced. Emma wasted no time packing her things, her mind racing with the events of the night. She needed to get out of the Redwood Lodge before anything else happened. As she hurried down the hallway, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed to move, every creak of the old building felt like a threat. She reached the lobby, her heart pounding. Mrs. Harris stood behind the front desk, her smile even more unsettling in the daylight. "Leaving so soon?" she asked, her voice dripping with a strange, cold amusement. Emma didn't respond. She rushed outside to her car, fumbling with the keys in her panic. As she drove away, she glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the same guests from the night before, standing in the courtyard, watching her with those blank, vacant eyes. She drove for miles, not stopping until she reached a busy town. Only then did she feel a sliver of safety. She checked into a small motel and finally allowed herself to breathe. But the unease didn't leave her. She was constantly on edge, jumping at every sound. Determined to understand what she had experienced, Emma began researching the Redwood Lodge. She found old news articles about disappearances and strange occurrences dating back decades. The lodge had a dark history, one that had been buried under its charming facade. Desperate for answers, Emma reached out to the local historical society. They confirmed her worst fears. The lodge was rumored to be haunted by the spirits of those who had vanished within its walls. Some believed the land itself was cursed, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead was thin. One evening, as Emma was compiling her research, she heard a familiar, rhythmic tapping on the window. Her blood ran cold as she turned to see the same pale, expressionless man from the lodge, staring at her through the glass. She screamed and ran to the door, but when she looked back, he was gone. Emma knew she had to confront the terror head-on. She couldn't keep running from it. Gathering her courage, she decided to return to the Redwood Lodge, determined to uncover the truth about what had happened to her and the others who had stayed there. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma drove back to the Redwood Lodge, her fear mingling with a newfound resolve. The sun was setting as she arrived, casting long shadows over the old building. The lodge looked even more sinister in the fading light, but Emma steeled herself and stepped inside. The lobby was empty, save for Mrs. Harris, who watched Emma with those cold, knowing eyes. "Back so soon?" she asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Ignoring her, Emma made her way to room 13. The air felt heavier with each step, as if the walls themselves were closing in. She opened the door to her room, the memories of that terrifying night flooding back. Taking a deep breath, she began her investigation. She searched every corner of the room, looking for any clue that might explain what had happened. In the closet, she found an old, dusty journal hidden behind a loose panel. The entries were written by various guests over the years, each one detailing similar experiences, strange lights, eerie figures, and a sense of being watched. One entry, dated decades ago, caught her eye. It described a ritual performed by the original owners of the lodge, meant to summon spirits from the other side. The ritual had gone horribly wrong, trapping the spirits in the lodge and cursing the land. As she read, the room grew colder, and the lights flickered. Emma felt a presence behind her and turned to see one of the ghostly figures from her first night, standing in the doorway. It was a young woman, her eyes filled with sorrow and despair. "Help us," the ghost whispered, her voice barely audible. Emma's heart raced, but she managed to ask, "How?" "Break the circle," the ghost replied before disappearing. Emma realized she had to find the place where the ritual had been performed. She gathered her courage and headed to the basement, the air growing colder with each step. The basement was dark and damp, filled with old furniture and cobwebs. In the center of the room, she found a circle of candles, long since extinguished. Following the ghost's instructions, Emma broke the circle, scattering the remnants of the ritual. The air seemed to vibrate, and a low, mournful wail echoed through the basement. She felt a rush of cold wind, and then everything went still. Exhausted and shaken, Emma returned to the lobby. Mrs. Harris was gone, and the lodge felt different, lighter somehow. Emma knew she had freed the trapped spirits, but the experience had left her deeply scarred. As she drove away from the lodge for the last time, she saw the ghostly figures standing at the edge of the forest, watching her with gratitude in their eyes. She had done what she could, but the memories of the Redwood Lodge would haunt her forever. Emma's story became a warning to others: some places are best left unexplored. The Redwood Lodge was one of those places, a gateway to a darkness that few could comprehend. Emma had survived, but the scars of that encounter would remain with her for the rest of her life. Emma drove away from the Redwood Lodge, the sun rising in the rearview mirror, casting a warm glow over the desolate landscape. Her body was exhausted, her mind a whirlwind of fear and relief. She knew she had freed the spirits trapped by the botched ritual, but the experience had left a permanent mark on her. Back in the safety of a bustling town, Emma checked into a small, well-lit motel. The lively sounds of the town were a welcome change from the oppressive silence of the lodge. She spent the next few days recovering, both physically and mentally, reflecting on the horrors she had faced. Determined to share her experience and warn others, Emma wrote a detailed account of her stay at the Redwood Lodge. She described the eerie events, the ghostly figures, and the dark history of the place. Her blog post went viral, capturing the attention of paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and concerned readers alike. Despite the overwhelming response, Emma couldn't shake the lingering fear. Every creak of the motel's floorboards, every flicker of the lights sent chills down her spine. She knew she had faced something far beyond the realm of normal experience, and it had changed her forever. One night, as she was finishing a follow-up post, she heard a familiar, rhythmic tapping at her window. Her heart raced as she turned to see a pale, expressionless figure staring at her through the glass. It was the same man from the lodge. She screamed, but when she looked again, he was gone. Emma realized that while she had freed the spirits, the malevolent presence that had cursed the lodge might still be tied to her. Desperate for answers, she reached out to the paranormal community. She met with experts who believed that the ritual had created a bond between her and the entity, one that wouldn't easily be broken. Determined to end the haunting once and for all, Emma agreed to undergo a cleansing ritual. The process was intense, filled with chants, incense, and protective symbols. As the ritual reached its climax, she felt a tremendous pressure lift from her, and for the first time since her stay at the lodge, she felt a sense of true peace. The experts assured her that the bond had been broken, but they warned her to stay vigilant. The forces she had encountered were ancient and unpredictable. Emma took their advice to heart, but she refused to let fear dictate her life. She continued her travels, though with a newfound respect for the unknown. Her blog became a source of cautionary tales, blending her love for adventure with the lessons she had learned. The experience at the Redwood Lodge had made her stronger, more resilient, and deeply aware of the thin veil between our world and the next. In the end, Emma's story served as a powerful reminder of the mysteries that lurk in the shadows, and the courage it takes to face them. The Redwood Lodge remained a dark chapter in her life, but one that she had survived and emerged from with a deeper understanding of the world. Emma had escaped the lodge, but the scars of that night would always be a part of her. She had faced the darkness and come out stronger, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable terror. And as she moved forward, she carried with her the knowledge that some places are best left undisturbed, their secrets too dangerous to uncover. Priest's terrifying possession at Copacabana Palace. Father Michael and Father Thomas, two priests from New York, decided to take a well-deserved vacation in Brazil. They had heard wonderful things about Rio de Janeiro and were particularly excited to stay at the luxurious Copacabana Palace. The sprawling hotel, with its grand architecture and stunning views of the beach, promised them a perfect escape from their demanding lives. The two priests arrived in Rio de Janeiro on a warm, sunny day. The city was vibrant and bustling, a stark contrast to the cold, urban atmosphere of New York. They checked into the Copacabana Palace, their spirits high as they were shown to their elegant suite. The hotel's opulence was evident in every detail, from the marble floors to the lavish chandeliers. Their first few days were filled with sightseeing and relaxation. They visited Christ the Redeemer, strolled through the Botanical Garden, and soaked up the sun on Copacabana Beach. It was during one of these peaceful evenings that they first heard about the haunted reputation of the hotel from a local guide. According to legend, the Copacabana Palace was built on land cursed by an ancient spirit, and strange occurrences had been reported by guests over the years. Father Michael and Father Thomas, both skeptical of such tales, laughed it off. However, they couldn't shake a growing sense of unease as the days passed. One evening, after a day of exploring, the priests returned to their suite to find the room unusually cold. The air conditioning was off, yet a chill seemed to permeate the air. They dismissed it as a draft and continued with their evening routine. Father Thomas suggested they say a prayer before bed, a habit they maintained even on vacation. As they began their prayer, the lights flickered and the temperature dropped further. The air became thick, and a faint, unidentifiable smell filled the room. Father Michael paused, glancing at Father Thomas, who looked equally puzzled. They finished their prayer quickly and decided to sleep. That night, Father Michael had a vivid nightmare. He saw a dark, shadowy figure standing at the foot of his bed, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The figure reached out, whispering words in a language he couldn't understand. He woke up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. Looking over at Father Thomas, he saw that he was also restless, mumbling in his sleep. The next morning, they shared their experiences, both unnerved by the similarity of their dreams. They decided to perform a blessing in their room, hoping to dispel any negative energy. As they began the blessing, the lights flickered again, and a low growl echoed through the room. Father Thomas suddenly collapsed, convulsing on the floor. Father Michael rushed to his side, praying fervently. Father Thomas's eyes flew open, but they were no longer his, they were dark and filled with malevolence. He spoke in a guttural voice, taunting Father Michael with words in Latin, challenging his faith and resolve. As Father Michael knelt beside his convulsing friend, the air in the room grew heavier, almost suffocating. The guttural Latin words coming from Father Thomas were unnerving, filled with malice and mockery. Father Michael knew he had to act quickly. He grabbed his crucifix and began the rite of exorcism, his voice steady despite the terror gripping his heart. "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave this servant of God." Father Michael's voice echoed through the room. The lights flickered violently, and the temperature dropped even further. Father Thomas's body twisted and contorted in unnatural ways, the demonic presence fighting against the holy words. The struggle intensified. Shadows danced on the walls, and an eerie, low growl reverberated through the room. Father Michael continued to pray, his resolve unwavering. He sprinkled holy water on Father Thomas, who screamed in pain and rage. The demon within him lashed out, cursing and threatening, but Father Michael stood firm. As the exorcism continued, Father Michael felt a presence trying to break his concentration. The shadows in the room seemed to take on forms, moving closer, whispering insidious doubts into his mind. He closed his eyes, focusing all his faith and strength on the task at hand. He knew that failure was not an option. After what felt like hours, there was a sudden, blinding flash of light. Father Thomas let out a final, agonized scream before collapsing, the oppressive atmosphere lifting instantly. The room fell silent, the temperature returning to normal. Father Michael knelt, exhausted but relieved, beside his friend. Father Thomas slowly regained consciousness, his eyes returning to their normal color. He was weak and disoriented, but the malevolent presence was gone. The two priests embraced, their bond stronger than ever after enduring such an ordeal. They knew they couldn't stay at the Copacabana Palace any longer. They packed their belongings and checked out, thanking the staff without revealing the true reason for their hasty departure. As they left, they felt a weight lift from their shoulders, but the memory of what had happened would stay with them forever. The priests found refuge in a smaller, quieter hotel for the remainder of their trip. Despite the beauty of Rio and the warmth of its people, the specter of their experience at the Copacabana Palace lingered. They spent their remaining days in quiet reflection, praying for strength and guidance. Upon their return to New York, Father Michael and Father Thomas shared their harrowing story with their church. The experience was met with a mix of skepticism and concern, but it was clear that both priests had been deeply affected. Their faith had been tested, and though they had emerged victorious, they were forever changed by their encounter with the darkness that had lurked within the luxurious walls of the Copacabana Palace. Back in New York, Father Michael and Father Thomas resumed their duties, but they were forever changed by their ordeal at the Copacabana Palace. They delved into research, trying to understand more about what had happened. Their search led them to Father Jerome, an experienced exorcist who had dealt with similar cases before. Father Jerome listened intently to their story, his expression grave. "You encountered a powerful entity," he said. "It's rare, but not unheard of, for such spirits to attach themselves to places where great trauma or dark rituals have occurred. The land where the Copacabana Palace stands has a long history, and not all of it is pleasant." He explained that the land was believed to have been cursed by ancient rituals long before the hotel was built. The spirits of those wronged and tormented in the past were restless, seeking vengeance and release. The luxurious hotel, despite its beauty, stood on ground soaked with pain and suffering. Father Michael and Father Thomas were determined to help. They gathered a team of priests and arranged to return to Brazil. Their mission was to cleanse the hotel and the land beneath it, to bring peace to the tormented souls and prevent future horrors. Upon their return to Rio, the two priests felt a mix of dread and resolve. The Copacabana Palace loomed over them, its grand facade hiding the dark secrets within. They met with the hotel management, who reluctantly agreed to let them perform the cleansing rituals. The staff had heard the stories and witnessed strange occurrences but had never spoken openly about them. The priests began their work at dusk. They started with prayers and blessings in every room, the echoes of their voices filling the silent halls. As they moved through the hotel, they felt the oppressive atmosphere return, heavier with each step. In the suite where Father Thomas had been possessed, they felt the strongest presence. The air was thick, and the temperature dropped drastically. The team of priests formed a circle, reciting powerful exorcism prayers, determined to rid the place of its dark inhabitant. The room seemed to fight back, the shadows swirling and the growls growing louder. The entity resisted, lashing out with force, but the priests held their ground. Holy water sizzled on contact with unseen forces, and the crucifixes seemed to glow with an inner light. After hours of relentless prayer and ritual, there was a sudden, deafening silence. The air cleared, and the temperature returned to normal. The priests felt a sense of peace settle over the room. They knew the cleansing had worked, but they were physically and mentally drained. Father Michael and Father Thomas spent the night at the hotel, their sleep undisturbed for the first time since their initial visit. The next morning, they completed the final blessings and left the Copacabana Palace, confident that the dark presence had been banished. They returned to New York with a sense of accomplishment and relief. Their experience at the Copacabana Palace had strengthened their faith and their bond, but it had also opened their eyes to the hidden battles fought in the spiritual realm. They continued their work with renewed vigor, sharing their story to warn others of the unseen dangers that can lurk in the most beautiful places. The Copacabana Palace stood as a testament to their victory, its haunted past cleansed, its future brighter. But for Father Michael and Father Thomas, the memories of their terrifying ordeal would never fade, serving as a constant reminder of the power of faith in the face of unimaginable darkness. Returning to New York, Father Michael and Father Thomas found themselves frequently reflecting on their harrowing experience at the Copacabana Palace. They had faced true darkness and emerged victorious, but the ordeal had left a lasting impact. Both priests were more vigilant, their faith deepened by the encounter. Their story spread through the church and the broader community, garnering a mix of awe and skepticism. They were often invited to speak about their experience, using it as a cautionary tale and a testament to the power of faith and resilience. Despite the public interest, they remained humble, focusing on their duties and helping those in spiritual need. However, the residual effects of their encounter lingered. Father Thomas began experiencing vivid nightmares, similar to the ones he had in Rio. The oppressive atmosphere, the cold air, and the dark, shadowy figure haunted his dreams. He confided in Father Michael, who revealed he too felt a lingering unease, as if the entity had not been entirely banished. They sought the guidance of Father Jerome, the experienced exorcist. He advised them to undergo a spiritual cleansing themselves, to rid any residual negative energy that might have followed them. They performed the cleansing rituals, invoking prayers and holy rites, and slowly the nightmares and feelings of dread began to dissipate. Meanwhile, back in Rio, the Copacabana Palace seemed to thrive, free from the haunting presence that once tormented its halls. Reports of strange occurrences ceased, and the hotel's management quietly acknowledged the priest's role in the transformation. The staff felt a renewed sense of peace and safety, able to work without fear of the unknown. Father Michael and Father Thomas continued their work with renewed vigor. They knew their experience at the Copacabana Palace was unique, a battle against forces most people could not comprehend. Their bond, forged in the crucible of that dark encounter, remained unbreakable. In the quiet moments, they would sometimes talk about their time in Brazil. The beauty of Rio, the warmth of its people, and the stark contrast to the terror they faced within the luxurious walls of the Copacabana Palace. They had come to Brazil seeking relaxation but found themselves engaged in a spiritual battle that tested their faith and resolve. Their story became a powerful reminder that evil can lurk even in the most beautiful places, and that courage and faith are essential in facing such darkness. They used their experience to educate and protect others, ensuring that no one else would have to endure what they had. The priests returned to their daily routines, forever changed by their encounter. They had faced true evil and emerged stronger, a testament to their unwavering faith and determination. The Copacabana Palace, once a place of hidden terror, now stood as a monument to their victory, its haunted past cleansed by their efforts. In the end, Father Michael and Father Thomas found solace in their faith and in each other. Their journey had taken them to the brink of fear, but they had returned with a deeper understanding of the spiritual realm and their role within it. Their story served as a beacon of hope and a warning, a testament to the enduring power of faith in the face of unimaginable horror. Haunted Room 311, Terrifying Stay at the Reed House. Samantha and Jake were on a much-anticipated road trip across the southern United States, eager to explore the charming towns and scenic routes along the way. They had spent months planning this adventure, mapping out each stop and eagerly looking forward to the sights and experiences that awaited them. Their journey had taken them from Atlanta to Nashville, but as evening approached, they felt the familiar tug of fatigue setting in. It was time to find a place to rest. As they drove through Chattanooga, Tennessee, they were captivated by the sight of a grand, historic hotel, the Reed House. The imposing structure stood out against the modern buildings, its elegance hinting at a storied past. The hotel's classic architecture and rich history intrigued them, and they decided it would be the perfect place to spend the night. They pulled into the parking lot, grabbed their bags, and walked into the hotel lobby. The interior was even more impressive, with its rich woodwork, sparkling chandeliers, and a timeless, classic charm that seemed to transport them to another era. Samantha and Jake approached the front desk, where a friendly receptionist greeted them with a warm smile. "Welcome to the Reed House. How can I assist you?" she asked. "We'd like a room for the night," Jake replied. "You're in luck. We have a few rooms available. I'll put you in room 311, one of our finest rooms," the receptionist said, handing them a key. As they made their way to room 311, Samantha and Jake chatted excitedly about their trip so far. The hallway leading to their room was lined with vintage photographs and antique furniture, adding to the hotel's historic charm. When they reached the door, Samantha turned the key and pushed it open, revealing a beautifully appointed room with vintage decor and a large, inviting bed. However, as they stepped inside, they both felt an inexplicable chill in the air. "This place is amazing," Samantha said, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. "But it's a bit cold, don't you think?" Jake nodded. "Yeah, it is. Maybe the air conditioning is on too high." They unpacked their bags and decided to freshen up before heading out for dinner. Samantha entered the bathroom and immediately noticed the antique bathtub, its porcelain gleaming under the dim light. She shivered, feeling a sudden unease she couldn't explain. Meanwhile, Jake fiddled with the lights, which flickered slightly before settling. Over dinner at a nearby restaurant, they struck up a conversation with their waitress about the hotel. She mentioned that the Reed House had a rich history, dating back to the 1800s. Intrigued, Samantha asked if she knew anything about room 311. The waitress hesitated before sharing a chilling tale. "Room 311 is quite famous around here," she began. "In 1927, a woman named Annalisa Netherly was brutally murdered in that room. She was decapitated in the bathtub by a jealous lover. Ever since, guests have reported strange occurrences, unexplained noises, flickering lights, water turning on by itself, and even shadowy figures." Samantha and Jake exchanged nervous glances. The story sent shivers down their spines, but they laughed it off, attributing the tales to local lore designed to attract tourists. They finished their meal and returned to the hotel, determined not to let the ghost stories spoil their night. Back in room 311, the eerie atmosphere was hard to ignore. The air seemed colder, and the lights flickered again as they prepared for bed. Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. They decided to get some rest, hoping that a good night's sleep would dispel their unease. As they drifted off, the events of the day played through their minds, the legend of Annalisa Netherly lingering in their thoughts. Little did they know, their night at the Reed house was about to become far more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. As the night deepened, the eerie atmosphere in room 311 grew more intense. Samantha and Jake tried to ignore the unsettling feeling and fell asleep. However, around midnight, Samantha woke up to the sound of running water. She sat up, her heart pounding, and listened. The sound was coming from the bathroom. She nudged Jake awake, her voice trembling. "Jake, do you hear that?" Jake groggily opened his eyes and listened. The distinct sound of water running filled the room. "What the hell?" he muttered, getting out of bed. Together, they cautiously approached the bathroom door. The sound grew louder as they got closer, but when Jake pushed the door open, the sight that greeted them sent chills down their spines. The antique bathtub was full of water, yet the faucets were tightly shut. Samantha's unease from earlier returned in full force. "This isn't possible," Jake said, his voice shaky. He turned the faucet handles, confirming they were off, and pulled the plug to drain the water. The cold draft that swept through the room made Samantha shiver. "We need to get out of here," she whispered, fear evident in her voice. Jake nodded, but before they could move, the lights in the bathroom flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. They fumbled to find the light switch, but when the lights finally came back on, they were greeted by an even more terrifying sight. In the mirror, a shadowy figure stood behind them. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its presence exuded a chilling, oppressive aura. Samantha screamed, and the figure vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. They rushed out of the bathroom, their hearts pounding in their chests. Jake grabbed his phone to call the front desk, but there was no signal. The sense of isolation intensified their fear. They decided to leave the room and find help. As they reached the door, they heard soft whispers, barely audible but undeniably there. Samantha felt a cold hand brush against her arm, sending a wave of panic through her. They threw open the door and ran down the hallway, the whispers following them like a sinister echo. The hotel's corridors, which had seemed charming and historic earlier, now felt like a labyrinth of terror. They reached the lobby, breathless and shaken. The night receptionist looked up, startled by their appearance. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her concern genuine. "No, it's not," Jake replied, his voice trembling. "Something is very wrong in room 311. We need a different room. Now." The receptionist's face paled slightly, but she nodded. "I understand. Room 311 has a history. Please, follow me. I'll get you another room." She led them to a room on a different floor, far from the haunted suite. As she handed them the key, she said softly, "I've heard the stories too. You're not the first to experience something unusual in that room." Samantha and Jake entered their new room, the oppressive atmosphere of room 311 still fresh in their minds. They double-checked the locks and sat on the bed, holding each other tightly. The night passed without further incident, but neither of them could shake the feeling of being watched. They knew they couldn't stay at the Reed house any longer. The next morning, they checked out, thanking the staff but offering no explanation for their abrupt departure. As they drove away from the hotel, they felt a weight lift from their shoulders, but the memory of room 311 lingered. Their journey continued, but the chilling events of that night in Chattanooga remained with them, a constant reminder of the unseen forces that can lurk in even the most beautiful places. They shared their story with friends and family, many of whom were skeptical, but the fear they felt was real and unforgettable. For Samantha and Jake, the Reed house had become a place of legend, a symbol of the thin veil between the living and the dead. Their bond was strengthened by the ordeal they had faced together, and their road trip took on a new meaning, not just an adventure, but a testament to their resilience in the face of true terror. The next morning, Samantha and Jake couldn't shake the eerie feeling that had settled over them during the night. They were both exhausted, their sleep interrupted by vivid nightmares and the lingering sense of dread from room 311. Despite their fatigue, they decided to push forward with their road trip, hoping that distance would help them leave the terror behind. They spent the day exploring Chattanooga, trying to distract themselves with the city's attractions. They visited the Tennessee Aquarium and took a walk along the scenic Riverwalk. But no matter how hard they tried to enjoy the day, the memory of the previous night clung to them like a dark cloud. As evening approached, they reluctantly returned to the Reed House to gather their belongings. The hotel, which had seemed charming and historic upon their arrival, now felt ominous. The grandeur of the lobby and the elegance of the decor only added to the sense of unease. When they reached their new room, they found their bags untouched and the room exactly as they had left it. But the sense of being watched persisted. They quickly packed their things, eager to leave. Just as they were about to exit, the lights flickered again, and the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Samantha turned to Jake, her face pale. "We need to get out of here. Now." Jake nodded, but as they stepped into the hallway, they heard the unmistakable sound of running water coming from room 311. They exchanged a terrified glance. "Let's just go," Jake urged, pulling Samantha towards the elevator. As they waited for the elevator, the lights in the hallway flickered, and they heard faint whispers echoing around them. The elevator doors finally opened, and they hurried inside, pressing the button for the lobby repeatedly. The ride down felt agonizingly slow. The whispers seemed to grow louder, filling the small space. Samantha clutched Jake's hand tightly, her knuckles white. When the doors finally opened, they rushed out into the lobby, gasping for breath. They headed straight for the front desk, where the same receptionist from the night before was on duty. Her expression grew concerned as she saw their frantic state. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "No," Jake said, his voice shaking. "We're checking out. Right now." The receptionist nodded, not asking any further questions. She quickly processed their checkout and handed them their receipt. "I'm sorry for any inconvenience," she said softly, her eyes full of sympathy. As they exited the hotel, they both felt a sense of relief, but the fear still lingered. They got into their car and drove away, the lights of the Reed House fading into the distance. They didn't stop until they reached the outskirts of Chattanooga, where they found a small, nondescript motel. The motel was a stark contrast to the opulence of the Reed House, but the simplicity was a comfort. They checked in and collapsed onto the bed, their bodies and minds exhausted from the ordeal. That night, they talked about what had happened, trying to make sense of it all. "Do you think it was real?" Samantha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake nodded slowly. "I don't know how else to explain it. The stories, the cold, the whispers, it all felt too real to be just our imagination." They decided to do some research on the Reed House and room 311. What they found only confirmed their fears. Countless guests had reported similar experiences: the cold drafts, the running water, the flickering lights, and the shadowy figures. The story of Annalisa Netherly's murder was well documented, adding a chilling layer of truth to the legend. Samantha and Jake knew they had been lucky to escape with only a frightening experience. They made a pact to never ignore their instincts again and to always trust each other's feelings, no matter how unbelievable they might seem. The rest of their road trip was more subdued. They continued to explore and enjoy the sights, but the shadow of the Reed House lingered. They shared their story with friends and family, many of whom were skeptical, but they knew what they had experienced was real and terrifying. For Samantha and Jake, the Reed House had become more than just a stop on their journey. It was a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the unseen forces that can lurk in the most unexpected places. Their bond was stronger, their trust deeper, and their courage fortified by the ordeal they had faced together. After leaving Chattanooga, Samantha and Jake continued their road trip with a newfound wariness. The terror they had experienced at the Reed House lingered in their minds, casting a shadow over their travels. They couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching them, even though they were miles away from room 311. One evening, as they settled into another motel for the night, Jake suggested they do more research about the Reed House and Annalisa Netherly. They wanted to understand more about what they had encountered and why it had affected them so deeply. They began by searching online, finding articles and forum posts about the hotel's haunted history. The stories were consistent. Guests who stayed in room 311 reported flickering lights, running water, cold drafts, and the presence of a shadowy figure. Many mentioned Annalisa Netherly, recounting the tragic tale of her murder in 1927. She had been a beautiful socialite who met a gruesome end at the hands of a jealous lover, decapitated in the very bathtub they had seen. As they dug deeper, they found a local historian's blog dedicated to the haunted places of Chattanooga. The blog provided more context about Annalisa's life and death. According to the historian, Annalisa's spirit was restless because she had been taken violently and unexpectedly. The traumatic nature of her death had bound her to room 311, unable to find peace. Samantha shivered as she read the details. "No wonder we felt so much anger and sadness in that room," she said, glancing at Jake. Jake nodded. "It's like she's stuck in a loop, reliving her last moments over and over. Maybe that's why she tries to reach out to the guests, to make them understand her pain." They continued reading, finding more accounts from paranormal investigators who had visited the Reed house. One team had captured audio recordings of whispers and eerie growls, while another had recorded temperature fluctuations and inexplicable drafts. All evidence pointed to a powerful and malevolent presence in room 311. Samantha and Jake decided to contact the historian who wrote the blog. They sent an email describing their experience, hoping for more insight. To their surprise, they received a response almost immediately. The historian, a woman named Dr. Evelyn Carter, offered to speak with them over the phone. During their call, Dr. Carter listened intently to their story. "You're not the first to experience such intense disturbances in room 311, she said. "Annalisa's spirit is one of the strongest I've encountered in my research. Her death was brutal and unexpected, and her spirit remains bound to the place of her murder." "Why did it feel like she was targeting us?" Jake asked. Dr. Carter paused. "It's possible that your presence somehow triggered a stronger reaction from her. Sometimes, spirits can sense when people are more attuned to the paranormal. Your fear and heightened emotions might have drawn her out more aggressively." Samantha and Jake exchanged uneasy glances. "Is there anything we can do to help her find peace?" Samantha asked. "There are rituals and blessings that can be performed to try to help spirits move on," Dr. Carter replied. "But they need to be done by someone experienced and sensitive to the spiritual realm. If you're willing, I can guide you through a cleansing ritual. It might not be easy, but it could help Annalisa find the peace she needs." They agreed to meet Dr. Carter in Chattanooga. Despite their fear, they felt a responsibility to try to help Annalisa's spirit. They returned to the Reed house with Dr. Carter, armed with holy water, sage, and a detailed plan for the cleansing ritual. The hotel management reluctantly allowed them access to room 311, though the receptionist's face showed clear concern. Dr. Carter led Samantha and Jake through the steps of the ritual, instructing them to focus on their intentions and remain calm. As they began the ritual, the room's temperature dropped dramatically. The lights flickered, and the oppressive feeling returned. Dr. Carter started chanting, her voice steady and soothing. Samantha and Jake joined in, their voices trembling but determined. The shadows in the room seemed to writhe and twist, reacting to the cleansing words. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices pleading and accusing. Samantha felt a chill run down her spine but kept chanting, holding Jake's hand tightly. Suddenly, the room fell silent. The cold draft ceased, and the lights stabilized. A sense of calm and peace settled over them, as if the room had finally been freed from its torment. Dr. Carter finished the ritual with a final prayer, her voice filled with compassion. "You've done something important today," she said, turning to Samantha and Jake. "Annalisa's spirit can hopefully find the peace she's been denied for so long." They left the Reed house for the last time, feeling a sense of closure and relief. The experience had been terrifying, but they had faced it together and helped a restless spirit in the process. Their bond was stronger, their courage fortified by the ordeal they had faced. As they drove away from Chattanooga, Samantha and Jake felt a weight lift from their shoulders. They knew they had been part of something significant, and the memory of Room 311 would stay with them forever. But now, it was a memory of courage and compassion, rather than fear and helplessness. After their successful cleansing ritual at the Reed house, Samantha and Jake continued their road trip with a renewed sense of purpose. The experience in Room 311 had left them shaken, but also deeply connected. They felt a sense of accomplishment in knowing they had helped Annalisa Netherly find peace, and this gave them the courage to face whatever lay ahead. As they left Chattanooga, the oppressive atmosphere of the haunted hotel seemed to lift. The open road stretched out before them, and they felt a newfound appreciation for their journey. They visited small towns, explored scenic byways, and soaked in the beauty of the southern landscape. Each stop offered a chance to reflect on their experience and the bond they had forged through their ordeal. One evening, as they camped under the stars in a quiet state park, they talked about the future. "Do you think we'll ever encounter something like that again?" Samantha asked, her voice filled with both curiosity and a hint of apprehension. Jake shook his head thoughtfully. "I hope not. But if we do, I know we can handle it. We've been through something extraordinary together. It's made us stronger." Their conversation drifted to their plans beyond the road trip. They talked about their dreams, their goals, and how they wanted to incorporate their newfound awareness of the spiritual world into their lives. They considered volunteering with paranormal research groups, helping others who might be facing similar experiences. As they lay under the stars, the night was peaceful, a stark contrast to the terror they had faced in Room 311. The memories of the Reed house were still vivid, but they no longer felt like a burden. Instead, they were a testament to their resilience and their ability to confront the unknown. Weeks later, as their road trip came to an end, they returned to their home in Atlanta. They were different people from the ones who had set out on the journey. Their bond was stronger, their trust deeper, and their sense of purpose clearer. They decided to share their story with a wider audience, hoping to help others who might be dealing with similar experiences. They started a blog detailing their road trip, with a particular focus on their time at the Reed house. The blog quickly gained traction, attracting readers who were fascinated by their story and inspired by their courage. One day, they received an email from Dr. Evelyn Carter, the historian who had helped them with the cleansing ritual. She congratulated them on their blog's success and expressed her gratitude for their efforts in bringing Annalisa's story to light. "Your bravery has helped many people understand the importance of facing and understanding the spiritual world," she wrote. "Thank you for sharing your journey." Encouraged by the positive response, Samantha and Jake continued to explore their interest in the paranormal. They joined local paranormal investigation groups, attended seminars, and even started giving talks about their experience. Their story became a source of inspiration and education, showing others that courage and compassion could overcome fear. Years passed, and the memory of the Reed house remained a defining moment in their lives. They never forgot the terror they felt, but they also never forgot the strength they found within themselves and each other. Their experience had transformed them, making them more aware, more empathetic, and more connected to the world around them. For Samantha and Jake, the road trip had been more than just an adventure, it had been a journey of self-discovery and growth. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable and their spirits fortified. The Reed house and Room 311 were now part of their story, a reminder of the unseen forces that shape our lives and the power of love and courage in the face of unimaginable terror. Terrifying nights at the Elms Hotel. Ethan, the son of a multimillionaire from Los Angeles, needed a break from his fast-paced life. He decided to escape to the Midwest with his girlfriend, Lily, hoping to find some peace and relaxation. They chose the Elms Hotel and Spa in Excelsior Springs, Missouri, a historic hotel known for its luxurious accommodations and, intriguingly, its haunted past. As their car pulled up to the grand entrance of the Elms, they were greeted by the sight of the majestic building, framed by lush gardens and towering trees. The hotel's grandeur was undeniable, with its stone facade and elegant architecture exuding an air of timeless charm. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the scene, making it all the more inviting. Inside the lobby, they were welcomed by the friendly staff. The receptionist, a cheerful woman named Emily, checked them in. "Welcome to the Elms Hotel and Spa. I hope you enjoy your stay. You've chosen a historic and rather interesting place to visit." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Interesting how?" Emily smiled. "The hotel has quite the history. It's been through 2 major fires, one in 1898 and another in 1910. Many guests have reported seeing spirits, including a woman searching for her lost son and a cleaning lady from the 1920s. We even have haunted tours if you're interested." Lily's eyes widened with excitement. "A haunted tour sounds like fun. What do you think, Ethan?" Ethan shrugged, smiling at Lily's enthusiasm. "Why not? It'll be an adventure." They received their room keys and made their way to their suite on the 3rd floor. The corridors were adorned with vintage photographs and antique furniture, adding to the hotel's historic ambience. When they reached their room, Ethan unlocked the door and pushed it open, revealing a beautifully furnished space with a view of the gardens. "This place is amazing," Lily said, stepping inside and admiring the decor. "But it does feel a bit old." Ethan laughed. "It's supposed to. That's part of the charm." They unpacked their bags and decided to explore the hotel. They wandered through the elegant hallways, peeking into the grand ballroom and the cozy library. The sense of history was palpable, and it was easy to imagine the countless guests who had walked these halls over the decades. As they explored, they couldn't help but notice the occasional flicker of the lights and the faint sounds of footsteps echoing in the distance. "It's probably just the old wiring," Ethan said, trying to sound nonchalant. But he couldn't deny the slight chill that crept up his spine. Later, they made their way to the hotel's restaurant for dinner. The meal was exquisite, the ambience perfect for a romantic evening. They chatted about their plans for the next few days, eager to relax and enjoy each other's company. After dinner, they returned to their room, feeling content and slightly drowsy from the delicious food and wine. As they prepared for bed, Ethan noticed a brochure on the nightstand detailing the hotel's haunted tour. "Hey, look at this," he said, handing it to Lily. She read it eagerly. "The tour starts at 9 p.m. tomorrow. It covers all the haunted spots in the hotel, including the basement and the old servants' quarters. We have to do it." Ethan chuckled. "All right, let's do it. It sounds like it'll be interesting, if nothing else." As they settled into bed, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The room was quiet, almost too quiet, and the air felt strangely heavy. He dismissed it as his imagination, fueled by the ghost stories they had heard earlier. Lily snuggled up to him, her excitement for the tour evident. "This is going to be so much fun," she murmured, drifting off to sleep. Ethan nodded, though he remained awake for a while, staring at the ceiling and listening to the faint creaks and groans of the old building. Finally, exhaustion overtook him, and he fell into a restless sleep, unaware of the terror that awaited them in the days to come. The next day, Ethan and Lily spent their morning exploring the charming town of Excelsior Springs. They visited quaint shops, enjoyed a leisurely lunch at a local cafe, and even indulged in a couple's massage at the hotel's spa. The relaxing atmosphere helped them momentarily forget the unsettling stories they had heard about the Elms. As evening approached, the anticipation for the haunted tour grew. They returned to their room to freshen up, and Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the windows, and the air felt cooler than usual. At 9 p.m., they joined a group of about a dozen guests in the lobby, all eager to experience the hotel's haunted history. Their guide, a local historian named Mr. Sullivan, greeted them with a mischievous smile. "Welcome, brave souls, to the Elms Haunted Tour. Tonight, we'll explore the darker side of this historic hotel and perhaps encounter some of its lingering spirits." Mr. Sullivan began the tour with a brief history of the Elms. He recounted the devastating fires of 1898 and 1910, which had claimed lives and left a lasting mark on the hotel. "Many believe that these tragic events are the reason for the hauntings," he explained. "Spirits of those who perished in the fires, along with other restless souls, are said to wander these halls. The tour group moved through the dimly lit corridors, the old wooden floors creaking under their feet. They stopped at various locations where ghost sightings had been reported. Mr. Sullivan shared chilling tales of guests who had seen a woman searching for her lost son and a cleaning lady from the 1920s, forever trapped in her duties. Their first stop was the Grand Ballroom. The elegant space, once the site of lavish parties, now seemed eerily quiet. "It's here that guests have reported hearing phantom music and seeing shadowy figures dancing," Mr. Sullivan said, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Some say it's the spirits of those who attended the last grand ball before the first fire." Ethan and Lily exchanged uneasy glances, feeling a sudden chill despite the warm evening. The group continued to the basement, where the air grew colder and the atmosphere more oppressive. "This is where the fires caused the most damage," Mr. Sullivan explained. "Many of the spirits are believed to linger here, unable to move on." As they descended the narrow staircase, the temperature dropped noticeably. The dim light cast eerie shadows on the charred walls. Ethan and Lily both felt a growing sense of dread. Mr. Sullivan led them through the basement, pointing out areas where guests had experienced cold drafts, disembodied voices, and even physical contact from unseen entities. Suddenly, the group heard a soft, mournful cry. The sound was faint at first, but it grew louder and more plaintive. "That's the cry of the woman searching for her son," Mr. Sullivan said, his expression serious. "Many have heard it, but few have seen her." Lily clutched Ethan's arm, her heart pounding. The cry sent chills down her spine. Ethan tried to stay calm, but he couldn't ignore the fear creeping up his own. The tour moved on to the old servants' quarters, where the cleaning lady from the 1920s was often seen. The small, cramped rooms felt claustrophobic, and the flickering light added to the eerie atmosphere. "It's said that she still performs her duties, tidying up and dusting," Mr. Sullivan said. "Guests have seen her walking these halls, always in her old-fashioned uniform." As the group explored the quarters, they heard the faint sound of a broom sweeping the floor. The noise grew louder, and they saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he realized it was the cleaning lady, her form barely visible in the dim light. She moved methodically, her ghostly figure a haunting reminder of the past. The tour ended back in the lobby, where Mr. Sullivan thanked everyone for joining. "I hope you enjoyed our journey through the haunted history of the Elms. If you're lucky, perhaps you'll experience a ghostly encounter of your own tonight." Ethan and Lily returned to their room, their minds racing with the stories they had heard and the sights they had seen. "That was intense," Lily said, her voice trembling slightly. "Do you think we'll see anything tonight?" Ethan shrugged, trying to hide his own unease. "I don't know, but let's try to get some sleep." As they settled into bed, the room felt colder than before, and the shadows seemed to dance on the walls. The haunting stories of the Elms Hotel had left a lasting impression, and they both wondered what the night would bring. Little did they know, their stay was about to become even more terrifying than they could have imagined. Ethan and Lily lay in bed, trying to ignore the eerie chill that seemed to permeate the room. The stories from the haunted tour echoed in their minds, making it difficult to relax. They finally drifted off to sleep, but their rest was short-lived. Around 2 a.m., Ethan was abruptly awakened by the sound of footsteps in their room. He sat up, heart pounding, and looked around. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. He nudged Lily awake. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Lily groggily opened her eyes and listened. The sound of footsteps grew louder, as if someone was pacing back and forth at the foot of their bed. Her eyes widened in fear. "Ethan, what's happening?" Ethan got out of bed and turned on the bedside lamp. The footsteps stopped immediately, and the room fell into an eerie silence. "There's no one here," he said, trying to sound reassuring. "It must be our imagination." Lily shook her head. "That didn't sound like our imagination. It was too real." They both sat in bed, the lamp casting long shadows on the walls. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a cold draft swept through the room. The temperature dropped rapidly, and they could see their breath misting in the air. "This isn't right," Ethan said, his voice shaking. We need to get out of here. As they started to gather their things, they heard a soft, mournful cry coming from the hallway. It was the same cry they had heard in the basement during the tour. Lily's face went pale. That's her, isn't it? The woman looking for her son. Ethan nodded, fear gripping him. We have to go. Now. They opened the door to the hallway and were met with a sight that made their blood run cold. Standing at the end of the corridor was the ghostly figure of a woman, her face twisted in sorrow and desperation. She was reaching out, as if searching for someone. Where's my son? She wailed, her voice echoing through the hall. Lily grabbed Ethan's hand, pulling him towards the stairs. They rushed down the dimly lit staircase, the woman's cries following them. When they reached the lobby, they found it deserted, the silence oppressive. We need to find someone, Ethan said, his voice urgent. We can't stay here. They headed towards the front desk, but before they could reach it, the lights flickered again, and the air grew colder. A figure emerged from the shadows, dressed in a 1920s cleaning uniform. It was the same woman they had seen during the tour, her ghostly form moving with an unsettling grace. Can I help you? She asked, her voice eerily calm. Ethan and Lily backed away, their fear palpable. We were just leaving, Ethan stammered. The ghostly cleaning lady stepped aside, allowing them to pass. As they hurried towards the exit, they glanced back to see her watching them with an intense, unsettling gaze. They burst through the front doors and into the night air, their hearts pounding. The hotel loomed behind them, its grand facade now a sinister reminder of the spirits trapped within. They ran to their car and drove away, the eerie silence of the night only broken by the sound of their own ragged breathing. As they left the Elms Hotel and Spa behind, the reality of what they had experienced began to sink in. We actually saw them, Lily whispered, her voice trembling. The spirits, they were real. Ethan nodded, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. We need to find a place to stay for the rest of the night. Somewhere safe. They found a small, nondescript motel on the outskirts of town and checked in, desperate for a sense of normalcy. As they lay in the modest room, the events of the night played over and over in their minds. They had come face to face with the supernatural, and the fear was still fresh. We have to tell someone about this, Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. People need to know what's happening at that hotel. Ethan agreed. We'll share our story, but first, we need to get some rest. It's been a long night. As they finally drifted off to sleep, they couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the Elms Hotel and Spa held. Their encounter with the spirits had been terrifying, but it had also made them realize the thin veil between the living and the dead. The haunted past of the hotel was no longer just a story, it was a chilling reality they would never forget. The next morning, Ethan and Lily awoke feeling drained but determined. They knew they couldn't leave Excelsior Springs without understanding more about what they had experienced. Over breakfast at a local diner, they decided to visit the town's historical society, hoping to find more information about the Elms Hotel and Spa and its haunted past. The Historical Society was housed in a quaint, old building filled with artifacts and documents detailing the town's history. They were greeted by Mrs. Haverford, an elderly woman with a wealth of knowledge about Excelsior Springs. When they mentioned their experience at the Elms, her eyes widened in recognition. You've encountered the spirits, then, she said softly. It's not uncommon, though it's always unsettling. The hotel has a long and tragic history. Mrs. Haverford led them to a dusty archive room and pulled out several old newspaper clippings and documents. She showed them articles about the devastating fires that had ravaged the hotel in 1898 and 1910. Many lives were lost in those fires, she explained. And it's believed that some of the spirits of those who perished still linger there. She also showed them records about the woman searching for her lost son. Her name was Elizabeth, and she had died in one of the fires, separated from her young child who was never found. Her spirit is restless, forever searching for her boy, Mrs. Haverford said, a note of sadness in her voice. The cleaning lady, whom they had seen, was identified as Margaret, a dedicated worker who had tragically died in the second fire. She was known for her meticulous work and her loyalty to the hotel, Mrs. Haverford continued. It's said she still performs her duties, even in death. Ethan and Lily felt a mix of sorrow and fear as they absorbed the information. These spirits were more than just ghost stories, they were echoes of real people who had suffered unimaginable tragedies. We need to do something, Lily said, her voice resolute. We can't just leave knowing that these spirits are trapped and suffering. Mrs. Haverford nodded in agreement. There are rituals and blessings that can help spirits find peace, but they must be performed with respect and sincerity. I can provide you with the necessary guidance. With Mrs. Haverford's help, they gathered the materials needed for the ritual: sage, holy water, and a written prayer for peace. That evening, they returned to the Elms Hotel and Spa, ready to confront the spirits one last time. As they entered the lobby, the air felt thick with tension. The friendly staff they had met on arrival seemed distant, as if sensing the gravity of their mission. Ethan and Lily made their way to the basement, where the fires had caused the most destruction. They lit the sage and began the ritual, reciting the prayer for peace. The air grew colder, and the oppressive atmosphere intensified. They felt a presence, a cold draft sweeping through the room. The faint sound of Elizabeth's mournful cry echoed around them. "Elizabeth, we are here to help you find peace," Lily called out, her voice steady despite her fear. "Your son is not here, but you can rest now. You don't have to search any longer." The cry grew louder, filled with sorrow and desperation. Ethan and Lily continued the ritual, their voices strong and unwavering. The shadows in the room seemed to shift, and they caught glimpses of ghostly figures moving through the darkness. Margaret, the cleaning lady, appeared, her ghostly form flickering like a candle in the wind. "You can rest now too, Margaret," Ethan said. "Your work is done. You can find peace." As they completed the ritual, the room fell silent. The cold draft ceased, and the oppressive feeling lifted. The air felt lighter, and a sense of calm settled over them. They knew the spirits had heard them. They made their way back to the lobby, feeling a profound sense of relief. The staff greeted them with smiles, as if sensing that the hotel's atmosphere had changed. Ethan and Lily thanked Mrs. Haverford for her guidance and headed back to their room. That night, they slept peacefully for the first time since arriving at the Elms. The oppressive air, the cold drafts, and the ghostly cries were gone. The hotel, once a place of terror, felt like a haven of tranquility. The next morning, they checked out, grateful for the experience that had brought them closer and deepened their understanding of the spiritual realm. As they drove away from Excelsior Springs, they felt a sense of accomplishment and peace. Their stay at the Elms Hotel and Spa had been more than just a vacation, it had been a journey into the unknown, a confrontation with the past, and a testament to their courage. They left with a deeper appreciation for life and a commitment to helping others understand and respect the unseen forces that shape our world. After leaving the Elms Hotel and Spa, Ethan and Lily continued their journey, but the events of their stay in Excelsior Springs stayed with them. The haunting experiences and the rituals they performed had profoundly affected them, giving them a new perspective on the supernatural. Back in Los Angeles, life returned to its usual hustle and bustle. Ethan resumed his responsibilities in his family's business, while Lily returned to her work as a freelance writer. However, they both felt a calling to share their story and raise awareness about the spiritual world they had encountered. They decided to document their experiences in a blog, detailing their journey from the moment they arrived at the Elms Hotel and Spa to the final ritual that brought peace to the restless spirits. The blog quickly gained a following, attracting readers fascinated by their tale of courage and compassion. They received numerous messages from people who had experienced similar encounters, each story resonating with their own. Ethan and Lily also began speaking at local events and podcasts, sharing their story with a wider audience. They emphasized the importance of respect and understanding when dealing with the supernatural, encouraging others to approach such experiences with an open mind and a compassionate heart. One day, they received an invitation to speak at a paranormal conference in Missouri. The conference was to be held in Kansas City, not far from Excelsior Springs. They saw this as an opportunity to revisit the town and the hotel that had changed their lives. Returning to Excelsior Springs, they were struck by a sense of nostalgia and reverence. The town, with its quaint charm and historic buildings, felt like a second home. They decided to visit the Elms Hotel and Spa to see how it had changed since their last stay. Upon arriving at the hotel, they were greeted warmly by the staff, who remembered them from their previous visit. The atmosphere in the hotel had transformed. The oppressive air and eerie chill were gone, replaced by a sense of peace and tranquility. The staff shared that there had been fewer reports of ghostly encounters, and guests felt more at ease. Ethan and Lily felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that their efforts had made a difference. They toured the hotel, revisiting the basement and the other haunted locations, now quiet and serene. As they walked through the grand ballroom, they felt a sense of closure. At the conference, Ethan and Lily shared their story with an audience of paranormal enthusiasts, researchers, and curious locals. They spoke about the importance of empathy and understanding in dealing with the supernatural, and the positive impact of their experience at the Elms Hotel and Spa. Their talk was met with applause and appreciation, and many attendees approached them to share their own experiences. One particular encounter stood out. A woman named Sarah, who had recently stayed at the Elms, approached them with tears in her eyes. "I stayed in room 301, she said. "And I felt a presence there, but it wasn't frightening. It was peaceful, almost comforting. I believe it's because of what you did." Her words brought tears to Lily's eyes. "Thank you for sharing that with us," she said. "It means a lot to know that our actions had a positive impact." Ethan and Lily returned to Los Angeles with a renewed sense of purpose. They continued their work in the paranormal field, helping others navigate their own supernatural experiences. Their blog and speaking engagements grew in popularity, and they became known for their compassionate approach to the unknown. Years later, as they looked back on their journey, they felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Their stay at the Elms Hotel and Spa had been a turning point, leading them to a path of understanding and empathy. They had faced their fears, helped restless spirits find peace, and forged a deeper bond with each other. Their story served as a reminder that the world is full of mysteries, both seen and unseen. By approaching these mysteries with an open heart and a compassionate spirit, they had found a way to make a difference in the lives of both the living and the dead.